Today we're going to talk about the new system in 363 Charlie Kilo. It's the Garmin G3X. We're going to give you some tips and cover some common gotcha areas using this avionics system. The first of which will be the startup process. One of the things that you'll recall from the checklist is that right after, when you're priming the engine, first of all, you want to be able to observe the fuel flow, and then immediately after start, you want to be able to check the oil pressure. So a common mistake we see is people turning on the master, priming the engine, and getting it started before the EIS or the engine information system is actually visible. So that's one thing that we want to do first here is go and turn on the master, let the system warm up, and then we'll get into the starting sequence. Okay, so one thing about the system installed on this particular airplane is we draw the GPS data we have the ability to draw it from two separate sources. In this airplane, we see here that the databases, several of the databases are expired, but we don't update the systems, the databases in this system. We update them in the second GPS radio here. So we will draw updated information from here. So don't be alarmed if you see that these dates are expired. They will be expired. Then just like we would normally see, we're immediately going to check the oil pressure, and we see it moving into the green there.
So like we mentioned before, when we see the Garmin G50 coming up, we see that the navigation databases there are up to date. One of the great features of this system is we do have the ability to revert back to these round gauges or steam gauges. Or we can use the tapes similar to the PFD, MFD type setup that you see in 313 Alpha. So what we want to do is hit menu twice. Then we're going to come over here to setup, PFD, primary flight display, and we will change the presentation. You see here we have round gauges selected, and we can select the alternate display of tapes. We can hit the back button to get out of that menu, and then tap over here to get back to full screen. Alright, so for our VHF radios, our COM and NAV radios, our communications and navigation radio number 1 is actually the Garmin 650. Now it's displayed here over on the G3X for us, and we can control it this way, but it's actually using the transceiver in the Garmin 650. The G3X has its own set of radios, and we've selected to identify those as COM and COM Radio 2. Our communications panel that you would traditionally see on the top of the radio stack in some of the other aircraft is represented here, and that's where we control our COM and NAV functions, what we're listening to, what we're communicating on. So if you think similar to the other Garmin panel, that on the top is your headphone select and the bottom is your microphone select, it's a similar representation here. Okay, so we can listen to and communicate on COM 2, and we can deselect COM 1. We can't deselect the one that we're talking on. I say that commonly for students. We want to turn off some background noise, but it's the one we're talking on, and the radios just don't allow us to do that. So in here, you can see that we are talking on communications radio number 1, similar to the G1000. We tap the active radio portion of the screen to flip-flop the channels. So right now we are talking and listening on COM 1. We have 121.15 Grand Prairie Ground selected in green in radio 1. If we want to just draw in the weather and listen to that too, similar to our other audio panels, we just put that into our headphones.
900, temperature 25, dew point 25, altimeter 3014, visual approach runway 18 in use. Advise you have information, Papa.
There we go, so we have most of the ATIS. So we're set up now here. We're not going to listen to ground so that we can focus on the ATIS. And so we're on COM 2. We're listening to Grand Prairie AWAS or ATIS at this particular moment, 118.475. If we need to adjust the volume, we can tap the radio button here, adjust the volume, either through a slider or the up and down buttons.
Scattered 900, overcast 1,000, 900, temperature 25, dew point 25, altimeter 3014, visual.
The 3014, we hear that now on the radio, and so one of the things that we can do, if we were back in the COM panel, 3014, we can set in the the instrument over here,
and
you'll see that it adjusts not only in the G5 screen, but it also adjusts as we select it here. So these two are tied together. So now we don't have a way, while we're listening to ATIS, to tune it directly, but for the G5. So it's a convenient way to be listening to ATIS, tune it in as you receive it. And if you're comfortable, that eliminates the need to write it down as you're listening. Okay, so let's talk about how to test the autopilot during your run-up prior to takeoff. So one of the things we want to do first is hit the AP or autopilot button to turn on the autopilot. Now I have the heading bug display, so when I put the autopilot in heading bug, it should initiate a turn towards the heading bug, in this case to the left. Now, the plane is not moving, so it's going to hold the turn, right? One of the things we think is it should roll out of a turn, but you got to remember we're not turning, so we're not getting any closer to the heading bug, so it's going to hold in this. One of the things that I want to do then is make sure that I can overpower it, okay? So that if it kicks in, it's doing something I want to, or I change my mind, I can overpower it and still fly it against the power of the servos. And then I can hit the autopilot disconnect button, or trim interrupt button. We hear the dual frequency tone there going back and forth, and now the autopilot has disengaged. Autopilot button is off, and it's not controlling or attempting to control the airplane. After that, you may choose to turn the flight director off, or you might want to leave it on. In the event of an autopilot or trim emergency, first thing we would want to do is attempt to disconnect or disengage the autopilot by pressing the autopilot disconnect here or up on the control there. In the event that's ineffective, we have two circuit breakers here, and these are marked with the autopilot and the trim. They've got collars on them here, so we can completely disable the autopilot and electric trim that way.
366 Charlie Kilo, for runway 18, clear for takeoff, Southport.
18, clear for takeoff, 363 Charlie Kilo. Alright, so let's talk about one of the features of the G3X. This plane is now equipped with what's called an electronic stability protection system. And so that, for normal flight, it's a great system to keep you safe. Keep you from inadvertently operating outside of the normal flight envelope, inadvertently stalling the aircraft. What happens is when you exceed certain parameters, the ESP system will turn on the autopilot and attempt to correct whatever configuration has caused its activation. That's great, like I said, for normal flight, but as students, sometimes we need to exceed those normal flight envelopes in the process of learning, such as some of our maybe commercial steep turns or our stalls. So one way we can tell that the ESP system is activated or actively monitoring is by these two dual green indicators on the artificial horizon bank indicator. So the first way we can disable those, if we're going to begin a maneuver that may cause that system to activate, is simply pressing and holding the autopilot disconnect button. So while I'm holding this down, you'll see that those bars have gone away. When I release it, they come back to life. Tell me that the ESP system is actively monitoring. The second way would be through the menu settings. So we get into that menu setting by hitting the flight mode enunciator bar up here at the top of the screen. This is the bar that would normally indicate what the autopilot is doing and what mode it's in. When we tap that, we see ESP is highlighted, and we can simply turn it off. We see that the dual green bars have gone away now, and they will stay off until we turn the system back on manually, or we go through another engine cycle. So if we shut down and start the engine again, it's going to automatically come back on. So we'll have to use one of the two methods to disable the system if we wish to do so. Alright, so I'm going to demonstrate a scenario when the ESP might kick in, and so that would be like our if we're out here practicing stalls, we see that the ESP is monitoring. As I slow down, you'll have to trust me that I can feel some forward pressure here, so I really have to work hard to pull against it, and here shortly the autopilot's going to kick in, and it's going to pitch the nose down for me.
Engaging autopilot.
So we see the autopilot there, it's beginning a recovery, and it's warning me about airspeed. So I'm going to begin a stall recovery here,
Airspeed.
and resume normal flight.
Airspeed.
Okay, we're going to talk about setting some PFD options, primary flight display options. One way to get to that menu is by just tapping the CDI there. We can see a couple of things. One, flight plan source. So we have two GPS radios in this aircraft. The G3X has one, and the Garmin 650 has one. Right now, because I have put in our flight plan on the G650, I need to make sure that I am accepting the track from an external GPS, being the G650. There, I'm tracking whatever flight plan or destination is set in the G3X. Here, I'm talking to the 650. One of the other common settings we need to adjust is the nav source for the CDI needle here. So right now it's magenta, it indicates GPS. If we want to change that to an OBS, we can come over here to the 650, default nav, and CDI. I'll do that again. So if I tap the CDI, you can see we can cycle through localizer, GPS, and different sources for the course deviation indicator.